接下来的两场论坛依旧是线上进行。第一场我们会讨论5G 企业专网。我们看到全球在5G 企业专网的商业化应用已经是如火如荼的在进行。那台湾呢，电信商也已经都布局好了基础建设，就等着 NCC 在今年要开放让企业申请执照。到底5G 企业专网的应用场景还有未来的挑战在哪里？这一场论坛我们就邀请了来自台美的专家一起来讨论。5位。好，现在大家都已经看到，我们的 moderator 是我们的五福向子源基金创办人，然后我们有4位嘉宾，包括英业达资深副总陈义平 ，Avesa 的共同创办人 Raj Nair， 还有 ThreeNet CEO Abraham Pucho， 以及泰雅科技的 CEO Mark 洪。嗨，五福。
Hey, yes, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like a good big group here. Thank you, Chen, who already did a lot of work for us. I guess fine. So we will be try to be on time. Won't impact your lunchtime. Hope. Enterprise digitalization is happening in a record-breaking pace, accelerated by COVID-19, as well as Ukraine war. As a result, data is generating everywhere at a record time. This data must be transported to the right place at the right time for processing and all storage. Networking is the infrastructure for such transportation. And the 5G, with its SLA or service level assurance, make this task possible and feasible. Meanwhile, the complexity of application grow, and it is not sufficient for network today just to provide connectivity services. Instead, it has to provide application service aware services so that application would obtain the best services without dealing with the intricacy of networks. If you are a little bit confused, don't worry. That's why you are here. Today, we are very lucky to gather. I would say the international G5, the GANA 5, across 4 time zones, and the purpose to explore the very sensitive, private 5G spots in enterprise. Well, without further ado, I will let our distinguished guests to introduce them a little bit, starting with Albert.
Okay, thank you, Wu Fu, and thank you to invite me to join this cloud. And it's a really huge problem. I'm Albert Chen, and now I work for Inventec. I guess Inventec is like an almost 46 years old ODM company. And to be short, previously, we manufacture roughly 100 million devices per year. It includes pretty much 4 million of infrastructure, so-called server computing, which is needed by 5G O-RAN. That's why I'm here. And furthermore, we have 21 million of computing devices, such as PC, laptop, and finally 75 million of smart devices. That's a cellular phone and other wearable devices. Therefore, each year we counted like 16 billions. When the 5G comes, my career was coming from 2G, 3G. I thought it'll be ended in 4G, but now I guess Chen mentioned 6G. And in the States, I work on 5G, 3G handset and chipset. Then later on, work a project of the GEO satellite. Then now it seems that everything comes together in the 5G domain. now utilize all application together. So in this 5G network, we've developed some of the 5G in a smart factory, which is I'm looking for, because Inventec has a factory all over the world. As I mentioned earlier, it spread it in Asia, China, and Chongqing, Shanghai. In Europe, we have Czech Republic and also Mexico, so as other cities. Therefore, smart factory in the by using 5G private network to establish this is my key goal to establish this. And again, initially, I guess I just spent 2 minutes to introduce my company and myself. I serve as CTO of the company and also newer technology to establish for future applications in my company. Thank you, Wu Fu.
Yeah, thank you, Albert. Mark?
Great. Thanks, Wu Fu, for the introduction. And my name is Mark Hung. I'm the CEO and founder of Atayalan. We're a 5G network platform and services company, specifically targeting the private 5G space. So I think in the previous talk, Cheng had already provided some background on why private 5G is becoming more prevalent. But I would like to talk a little bit more about some of the details of why this is. So as everybody knows, in order to really survive in this new world, every company, whether you're a tech company or a non-tech company or a more traditional company, you're embarking now on your digital transformation journey. So on this journey, definitely a lot of the new next gen technologies are being more widely adopted. Whether it's the cloud, whether it's big data, or IoT, or some of the mobile technologies. But regardless of any of these next gen technologies you're adopting, I think one of the key things that Cheng pointed out in the previous talk is that what a lot of people are overlooking is the necessary to have a very strong foundation at the edge. And when we say having that strong foundation at the edge, it's really twofold. One is from a last mile connectivity perspective, and also from a application service and application support perspective. So, and you may wonder, how has this digital transformation been happening over the last few years, especially during the pandemic time? And actually, one of the things that we've noticed here at Atayalan is that progression on this digital transformation journey has actually accelerated during this digital post-COVID world. Last year, I think Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, was quoted as saying that they've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months. And of course, as some of you know, one of these reasons is that as with pandemic lockdowns, with supply chain issues, companies have found that digital transformation was no longer a nice to have, but a must have in order to survive in this new world. The second phenomenon that we've seen over the last 2 years is that the proliferation of devices, especially in the industrial IoT space, is growing much more rapidly than before the pandemic. So, there's some forecasts that, from an established base of about 100 million devices that have been installed for industrial IoT in 2020, that's going to grow to up to 3 billion in the next decade, over to 2030. The third kind of trend that has happened during the COVID era is that there's a additional heightened risk and need for cybersecurity. And in fact, both 2020 and also last year, 2021, unfortunately, it's set every year it's been setting new records for data breaches across the world. And finally, with the fourth trend that's continued to happen, not just in North America and but other parts of the world, is that there's now availability of new sources of spectrum, whether it's shared spectrum like CBRS in the US, and similar releases of spectrum in places like Germany and the rest of the EU, but also the availability of unlicensed spectrum like 6 gigahertz. And so all four of these trends, right? The acceleration of digital transformation, the proliferation of devices from industrial IoT, the heightened risk and need for cybersecurity, and finally availability of new types of spectrum, that's really driven the need for something like private 5G. And in fact, some forecasters call that just over the last last few years, between 2020, just pre-pandemic, to next year in 2023, so in 3 short years, the industry expects the private cellular market to more than double to $8 billion in next year. So that's kind of some of the impetus for private 5G I've outlined, and a little bit about what we're doing here at Ayala. Pass it back to you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Mark. Okay, Raj, next.
Well, thank you, Wu-Fu. So I'm Raj Nair. I'm the founder and CEO of Avesha, and what we're building is a technology that will let applications to be able to have a distributed deployment, like Cheng was mentioning in his talk. Applications cannot be confined in one place anymore. They have to have, there is a reason, real business reason why they need to be distributed, whether it is for resiliency, whether it is to give low latency, which is what 5G is all about. You want to have that ability for these applications to be deployed easily. And what we are building is something we call an application slice. And we borrowed the term slice from the 5G space with network slices. But what we are talking about is that in the application world, there is now the proliferation of Kubernetes, which is a orchestration software where you can take your application, put them in containers, and now you can scale them and they become resilient automatically. And so this Kubernetes is now available everywhere and it's ubiquitous. So in fact, most of the 5G networks are also built using Kubernetes. So the CNFs that are running 5G are all Kubernetes applications. So you have this wonderful opportunity where you have a completely software-defined infrastructure that you can now take advantage of, and you can make that infrastructure more tailored to the application. Like Cheng was pointing out, make it application aware. And we are playing a role in that, in the sense that we are the buddies of the application. We're peering with the application, and then we're able to sort of help the underlay, whatever that might be, to be programmed properly. So this is what we call as a slice. And the slice is a concept that we came up with, which is a sort of a virtual cluster. So imagine a cluster is where you have application deployed typically in Kubernetes in the clouds. So when you go to Google or if you go to AWS, you get clusters. But now you have, instead of having the clusters, they have a problem in the sense that you kind of get locked into that cluster. They were designed to be a single entity, but clearly that's not enough. So if you have to have an application that spans these, now you have to either work very hard on creating those connections, or you could use what we're building, which is an application slice that helps you virtualize that and gives you the surface on top of which you can deploy. So that is the tie-in. And why are we doing this? What are the use cases? Well, look, if you look at as Mark had also pointed out, the modernization is a huge trend. And in that, if you look at hybrid, that's about 40%. So you need, for many enterprises, whether it is for regulatory reasons, they need to have, or security reasons, they want their data to be resident in one place, but maybe accessed from different places. So that becomes a hybrid situation. Or if you wanted, for example, the low latency for, as somebody had pointed out, metaverse, a lot of meta applications are, with AR, and you want to have that ability to get the low latency so that you get quicker response. So, and then of course there's the edge inferencing and many such applications that need that low latency. So for this new breed of applications and for the ones that are undergoing modernization, you do need to have this kind of a distributed deployment, but something that can be controlled. Something where you can control the applications even if they are in different places. So for example, the access controls, the resource limits, all of this, you want to control it from one place. And this is the reason why you need something like the mechanism that we are talking about, like an application slice that can go across clusters and go across locations and allow you to have the same degree of control like you would if you were in one cluster. And this is what we are able to achieve with this technology that we're calling as an application slice. And there are even the 5G providers are actually interested in using this, for example, in separating out, because if you want to have multi-tenancy, so what you're doing is you want to have many network slices, one for each customer, for example, but say in a private 5G deployment, but you want to keep their CNFs separate for obvious reasons. You don't want to mix them up. And so from that standpoint, again, we are able to do something to create that multi-tenancy. So this is the tie-in from the application down, looking into the network and allowing the applications to be able to take advantage of a distributed deployment, whether it is for giving you the low latency or for in their own, or whether it is for resiliency, to be able to express that in a way that that can be then taken by the network and then optimized, like my friend Abraham will be talking about from his company's viewpoint. And so this is how this ecosystem, at least with some of the companies here, come together, and it's a very interesting opportunity, and obviously something that's growing like really good. Like if you look at just the hybrid market, it's growing at 16% CAGR and reaching 150 billion by 2027. So this is a huge market, and obviously something that is very exciting. So with that, thank you very much, and thank you, Wu-Fu.
Okay, thanks, Raj. Okay, Abraham?
Thanks, Wu-Fu. I am Abraham Kucherel. I live in one of the beautiful parts of the country, sunny Colorado. So greetings from Colorado to all of you in Taipei. And I'm the president and CEO of 3Nets. And, you know, it's a great event where Cheng kind of framed how the technology is evolving and what is the need for this technology to all come together to serve the enterprise as we know today, and will be more so in the future. So Mark talked about a bit about the 5G and the private 5G, how it is going to help the enterprise. And we know, based on what Cheng talked about, based on what Raj just talked about, the new applications are going to be built around microservices, which is smaller software units that is enabling you to build a very scalable application. And for that to happen, you need Kubernetes, which is what Raj talked about, where Avisha is building this tremendous platform that allows this application to scale, not just from one place or one cloud, but multitude of clouds, multitude of areas, or even containers that spread around the globe. Now, that is all in the application level. That is all happens in the application and, you know, the Kubernetes layer, pretty much at a very high level in the OSI a 7-layer architecture. For that to efficiently traverse across the globe, like Raj talked about, there has to be some kind of underlay that enables that communication to happen or that transfer of data to happen. The great quote that Chen just mentioned was, 3nets can be a great unifier, regardless of what application it runs, regardless of what infrastructure it runs, or what kind of application pattern, the software pattern, architecture pattern that application may use, regardless of what it is, 3nets can bring that all into a universal way to support that application. And also, Chen kind of alluded that the service unaware or application unaware network that we all used to is pretty much dead. You cannot sustain that kind of a network any longer. So the new network is going to be application aware. We need to know where the services are coming from. The network need to be aware of it so that the appropriate transfer of data and information can happen and the application can be served appropriately. So with that, Wu-Fu?
Okay, thank you for the introduction. I think the following one is that some of you may cover it already, but still, I'd like to see everyone's view on this today's main topic, which is your observation and view on private 5G network in enterprise applications. And so I will start with the same Albert start with, and probably try to keep it in 3 minutes. Actually, I lost my clock. Anyway, let's do it to make sure we get it out.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Wu-Fu, again. And I learned from all the network layers folks to talk about 5G so-called network slicing, and I'm happy to see that. And also talking about observation of 5G private network. I believe from my experience from 2G, 3G into 4G, now it's 5G. I guess big difference of 5G is IP network. They can go to cloud or virtualizations. And second, maybe there are something so-called software defined. Previously, software defined network. Now software put in the RAN. Again, that's a challenge work, especially recent Open RAN. However, in these two trends, it brings up, as I mentioned earlier, smart factory without AI, without all the autonomous so-called applications, and not even saying that, I guess Mark mentioned, after China-US trade war, we all go into so-called digital transformation. That's needed because we have all companies spread all over the globe. And we eagerly also, we were asked by how do you sustainable to provide with all the products or in everywhere. Therefore, with all the life cycle, product life cycle, 5G in the smart factory, which can enable the Industry 4.0. That is the view that I can see. Therefore, from communication theory, and that's a challenge. However, it's ongoing. I saw a lot of operators in Europe in this year. There are 22 mobile operator. They try to deploy these Open RAN. And again, it's good things. It's ongoing. And I'm hoping that in our side, then later I can share more on how to deploy down into our smart factory, because a lot of applications, even I guess now SA standalone network can really provide, as I mentioned earlier. The first, we are looking for so-called eMBB, the bigger bandwidth, previously 5G. You can call that it's a 10 gig. However, I guess it's impossible to get to that the speed. And second, low latency. Compared to 4G, it's like a 1/10. So we are looking for, say, if you are talking about 1 millisecond, then yes, based on that, we can deploy many applications in a factory. Then definitely massive IoT in the future. So all along, we all embrace all these good and equip us as a future of our smart factory by doing digital transformation type of applications. So that's my observation, and I'm hoping that with all the innovation in place, the 5G network in our smart factory, now 2019, we really put into a POC in our smart factory. And yes, we all follow what Chance mentioned, I believe. We have edge servers. We have many servers because Inventec manufactures a lot of servers. Then we put the AI, we do the training, we do the inference locally. We are trying to connect so-called OT, CT, and IT. That's a challenge. Operation and communication, also information, all these three together. Then again, facing a lot of stability issues. And again, maybe later I will share a little bit more on application. By all that, I believe 5G private network is a way for us in the smart factory that we can adopt. So we put a SI team to really integrate from the bottom to the applications or even to the cloud, adding edge. But cloud, now we haven't done the 6G yet, up to LEO. But again, these are very good directions, and all combine all the technologies together. It's a challenging, but I'm looking forward to welcome these applications and successful. Thank you.
But thank you, Mark. Next, could you just express your view, the main topic?
Yeah. So thanks, Wu-Fu. I think it's interesting, right? You hear from Albert, obviously at Inventec, they're a practitioner of private 5G in one of the main applications for this technology, which is smart manufacturing. So you kind of heard a lot of the benefits that 5G brings. Higher throughput, lower latency, perhaps greater scalability to be able to support a much larger number of endpoints and devices. But I think repeatedly, what you've also heard Albert say is very difficult, it's very challenging, and it's just generally very, it's hard to deploy. And so I think, one of the things that the industry needs to address when it comes to private 5G is to make sure that it is as easy to deploy, if not easier, than your typical enterprise Wi-Fi solution. So in order to do that, what does it take? Right? So I think at a minimum, the 5G network cannot be, running in parallel with the rest of your enterprise architecture, right? It needs to be fully integrated into your existing IT infrastructure so that you can make the best use of that, whether it's from a traffic management perspective, whether it's from a security policy enforcement perspective. All of these things are kind of table stakes when it comes to implementing private 5G. Because after all, there are going to be very few scenarios where you have a greenfield, a brand new deployment that's going to have private 5G built in. Most of the time, you said you're going to have private 5G coming into a brownfield or existing deployment with existing infrastructure and making sure that everybody plays nice with each other. That's the first thing. Making sure that integration with the existing enterprise architecture is easy to do. Second is really the overall user experience. The user interface has to be very simple, from the initial installation and deployment to the subsequent management of the overall infrastructure. So being able to have a single pane of glass in order to monitor your network traffic, not just from private 5G, but for all your network traffic, is paramount. Third is that you need to make sure you have the right performance for the right application. So what I mean is that besides just the typical, speeds and feeds, gigabits of throughput, milliseconds of latency, you want to make sure the right performance is available when needed. So for example, for mobile applications like AGVs or robots, you want to make sure that wherever they're moving to, you're able to make sure that the handover across different nodes is adequately achieved. The fourth is, I think both, Abraham and Raj have already talked about how important it is that you are able to be aware, be app aware for your overall network. And so definitely, besides putting in this brand new super high performance network into your site, you want to make sure that you provide an easy way for your existing applications to take advantage of that network. And finally, as I mentioned in terms of one of the trends that's been happening during the COVID era, is that you want to make sure that for all these things, right, whether it's the enterprise integration, whether it's the high performance, whether it's the simple UI, or whether it's the app-aware framework, underlying all of this is that you want to have a very robust security framework so that by introducing private 5G into your enterprise, you're not introducing additional attack vectors that put your enterprise in harm's way and make them more vulnerable to external attacks. So I'll stop right there and perhaps pass it on to the other panel.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, 3 minutes, Raj, on your view of this 5G private network applications.
Absolutely. So as both Mark and also Albert had pointed out, the important thing is to make this easy for applications, and so that is like very important. And so because a lot of application guys don't know anything about networks, so you have to make this dead easy. So that is what we've started looking at and saying, how do we take something as rich as the private 5G and the application that it can enable, but yet make it, as Mark had pointed out, for the application guy, controllable from one place and this deployment, and give them the right quality of service, again, that you can select from the network, through the programming that you can do of the network, and make that easy for them to consume. So this is very, very important because they are used to, GitOps way of deploying. They just want to be able to, have Helm charts, which they download, and rest of it is just, they want it to be like magic. So, you annotate that, you allow them to deploy, and this is why we came up with this application slice, so it can deploy onto that. And now all of a sudden they can get their deployment, which is spread into many locations, but at the same time, get the quality of service and the latency that application needs. And again, it varies from one to the other. The needs are not the same for every application. So there needs to be some prioritization and so on and so forth. And this is the kind of specific area that we are addressing, and it'll help scale this very nicely to large number of applications and manage them, even though they are distributed and deployed in many, many parts in different locations, different clouds, different data centers, whatever might be the actual footprint. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Wu-Fu.
Yeah, thanks, Abraham.
Right, I think we've been just talking about how, 3nets can help these applications that Mark is building and Raj is supporting from their companies. So we know clearly that 5G is a very latency sensitive application. Well, 5G can support much latency sensitive applications. The URLLC is one of the main capability of 5G. For that to be supported, applications has to be distributed. And for those applications that are distributed to be able to be supported, you need to have some kind of unifying fabric that needs to come into play. And that is really an intelligence where, this intelligent machine, for example, is fully aware of what's going on in the domain that this network or this application is being deployed at. So regardless of where the application has to go, regardless of where the workloads are deployed, this unifying fabric has to support very effectively multiple path, the most optimal path for this application to get to. And that is what we support. That is what 3NET support. Back to you, Wu-Fu.
Well, yeah, thank you very much. And I guess really a lot of good questions to follow, but time's kind of running short. Before that, I really like to take this opportunity to plead to the responsible party in Taiwan government to make sure the speedy release of 5G private spectrum, and in such a way that as soon as possible, and then reasonably priced, also at least restriction in its usage, as long as it's not used for public 5G service. Well, instead, we follow some question. Maybe just give everyone a minute to do a quick answer. To start again from Albert, you are the only one actually from user space in this panel. So you should know the best what are the key challenges that enterprise early adopter are facing in private 5G. It's your 1 minute.
Okay, Wu-Fu, thank you again. And yes, 1 minute, I cannot address all the challenges. And okay, yes, let me summarize. I guess basically, if you are to integrate all the communications, including Wi-Fi, including 5G or RFID or zip, all those things into a factory, so-called heterogeneous network, right? I'm not mention all the wire communication and TSN in the machine. Then you need to connect them, and also on the top, you need to talk with IT people saying that how do you do your security? Is that secure enough when you connect to the internet? When you do the operations, you are facing that. Now, how do you pay for it? Who is doing service? Is that too expensive? When you talk about ORAN, software-defined so-called architect, then definitely the price is half. For example, you have RU, you have so-called CUDU, you have core network. Then on top of that, you need to hire many knowledge people to operate that to begin with. These early adapters that they need to be aware. Therefore, all those challenges, I'm not mentioning all the applications Raj and Abraham mentioned, and including Mark. So I believe challenge is still on there. All the applications, we need to have stable environment to deploy all the AGC, AR, VR, and security, etc. Okay, I guess 1 minute's up.
But thank you. Well, it's dinner time in California, I know. But as a startup, you always stay hungry. Right, Mark, your company is building the best solution for private 5G. And could you talk a little bit about what's the most likely or the most high interest in those early adopter of the network? And also maybe a little bit quickly about the difference between Taiwan in 5G industry compared to other geographies. Okay, Mark?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to say that. I'll try to leave some time also for the other panels as well. So, I think in terms of the verticals that are most interested in private 5G today, you can kind of think about what are the characteristics that make private 5G stand out, right? So a very robust and resilient network, right? That can perhaps be a replacement for the existing wired network, a very secure network, and also a network that provides not just high performance, but very deterministic performance, right? So predictable performance. So given those characteristics, I think it's not hard to imagine kind of what some of the initial vertical markets are, which are in the areas of manufacturing, and also a lot of the supply chain and logistics related markets as well. But one other market that, actually now has seen growing interest in private 5G is those that are currently exploring metaverse types of applications, because for whether it's AR on the manufacturing floor or VR in the corporate enterprise for remote and hybrid meetings, private 5G comes in very handy with those characteristics to be able to support those applications. And just really quickly, in terms of the difference between the Taiwanese market versus the global market, I think there are a lot of similarities. First of all, in terms of the vertical markets we talked about, obviously Taiwan has a very strong manufacturing sector and logistics sector, so definitely there's a lot of interest there. But what has been a little bit unfortunate, and which, you know, thanks Wu-Fu for pointing that out, is that while other countries like the US and Germany and Japan have already designated the spectrum to be used for 5G and outlined the rules surrounding that, Taiwan is a little bit late compared to those other economies in getting that pushed through. So hopefully that will be expedited soon. Pass it back to you, Wu-Fu.
Okay, thanks. Raj, I know it's late night in Boston, but thank you for staying up late for us. Could you help us with those two questions with quick answer? What are typical enterprise hybrid cloud use cases? And what are the challenges faced by people or the application adapting hybrid cloud deployments? Quick.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the main things, the main applications that we see that people want, you know, the hybrid application because they want to maintain their data in some location, like on-prem, and in some under their control, and yet be able to provide, use the cloud, for example, for scaling up some of their use cases. So in these cases, they want to use a hybrid infrastructure, which is, again, just like it was pointed out, they want something that will retain the security, but it's also easy to use and automatable. So that's why we did this application slide that we created. It's got the zero trust security, and it can automate all of this network connectivity and usage, I should say. And then the other thing was that they want the challenges are that, you know, when they try to connect clusters which are in two different locations, there were a host of problems like IP address overlaps, the fact that you have to go through firewalls, and they want to mess with this firewall rules. So they want something that is simple. They don't want to have to deal with all of that IT infra. They want it to be automated, and at the same time be able to control this from one place. If you have it in different places, then you have the problem of policy drift across these locations, and then managing the namespaces across these locations. And finally, you know, the workload itself, you know, how much of workload are you putting in each? Is that the optimum distribution? You know, you need some help there, maybe, and we are using AI for that to optimize that distribution. So it is a set of problems, but if you are able to address this, you can see a great adoption because there's a lot of interesting applications here.
Thanks. Hello, Denver, the capital of Rocky Mountain oysters. Unfortunately, I'm a vegetarian.
Well, I think we are running out of time. So I would just say that if anyone has any questions, reach out. I'm sure that the conference will make available our contact information. And I'm also available on LinkedIn. So please reach me. We can help you with whatever questions you may have. Thanks again. Back to you, Wu-Fu.
Okay, really, thank you. We have a lot of stuff to cover. Unfortunately, the time is not enough. But anyway, thank you everyone for attending. Really, the enterprise network objective is really just provide, integrate, simple, reliable, and secure service with high CP value. That's really the purpose. And all those three companies are really building toward that goal. And today, I really all you have to do, if you are confused, again, this is new area, just take away a few jargons, then you will be ahead of most other people. The microservice, cluster, container, and Kubernetes. Okay, with that, actually, my trademark, unfortunately, they say they cannot do it real time. Well, I just the time's running out. Just read it, and well, for those who don't know, could ask for translation with the charge. Anyway, that is IGG5 论5G 企业专网新商机，白牌台湾已称帝，红牌系统使暴力。Well, it's basically saying that we have ICG5, the Indian and Chinese, can apply for discussing 5G. Right? And then the enterprise private networks is really the new opportunity. And Taiwan white box is already the king of the world, right? So what's needed, system red box is where the insane profits are, and that's where I encourage Taiwan industry to move toward that sector. Okay, well, again, thank you very much, and see you maybe sometime soon. Okay, bye bye.
好，谢谢五福。五福每一年都要给我们一首打油诗哦，大家要铭记在心。好。